We are diving into flow engineering, which is a practical guide to improving workflow, team alignment, and unlocking innovation. We have with us Agile, who is a co-author of the book.
Delighted to be here with you both. Thanks so much for the invitation.
Happy to be here. Yeah, this board game insight is really Andrew's. And I was really surprised by this, but I think it's really valuable. It's something I never expected by something that you would run in a workplace or in a business or an enterprise. But I think it's really profound. The idea that you can come in with no context and be a contributor, an effective contributor, I think is really something that we never really aimed for. But after going through all the efforts of defining the maps and producing the instructions was kind of one of the outcomes.
Our book, which we will discuss today, is the Flow Engineering. It's available on Audible, and also you can buy it for Kindle. This is a practical guide using value stream mapping techniques to align the teams and the processes and get the best value and outcome we can get. It's an open, adaptive, and engaging series of practices, and it can take you from complexity to clarity. This book is a guide for you in case you read it. It's not only giving you the concept, the idea, but it also helps you to use this technique in your workplace and really optimize the processes to become somebody who aligns the team and gets the best value. We have a question for you. Which aspects of flow engineering are you the most curious about? Value stream mapping, aligning teams, or optimizing workflows? And that's what we get here as a result, and sort of balance between those three. I captured some achievements from the book, which was written in the flow engineering. The fields where the authors applied this technique was in finance, in retail, in healthcare, telecom, education. So you can apply these techniques in many fields. So it's not only for product development, or it's not only for optimizing customer delivery. There are many fields where you can achieve improvements. They optimize workflows in customer onboarding or product development, service engagement. So many workflows can be optimized. This is something that is applicable for many workflows. And the achievements they had, some of the examples are $20 million is investment saved, 18 months of development time saved, while feature development is reduced from 16 weeks to 2 weeks. So later on we share the details how to arrange this type of workshop. If you apply this kind of workshop and involve the team members, you can have great outcomes within 2-3 days that can save you investment costs and time to work. Shortly, I would like to talk about the problem of scale and how to have solution to scale. So we face with some difficulties when an organization grows, or when a company is acquired, or new teams need to work together. Sometimes teams focus on their own goals and they are working in silos and not easy to understand what others do. And when more and more a company or groups expand, the less insights we have how our work is connected to the inputs and outputs and how we work together towards the value to provide the customer. So to solve that, there are many types of methods and that can be applied. There are some called prescriptive methods and generative methods. And some of examples for the first one, like Prince2, which is takes time to acquire, this takes time to understand and apply. And there are generative methods, which means we generate ideas together as a group and we solve these problems together. It was really interesting idea that I read in a book that some call also the IKEA method, also a generative method. And what the book said is that we like when we build something ourselves. Same applies to generative method. When we discover the process ourselves, we are more connected to that. So flow engineering is closer to the generative method, and it helps us to build the processes together, to understand the current process together, and then move forward to have an optimized process. So what is your biggest challenge in achieving workflow efficiency? You can, again, answer from your phone, or you can also put it in the chat. One of the problems highlighted also in the book was Many times we have just endless meetings and endless tools, and we need to update things in separate files. And then it helps to clarify who is reading those files. Is it helping in the overall flow? So I really see that it's a problem sometimes as well. When the process is bad for quite a long time, you assume that what you're doing is equally important to everything else. And when you're in a room all together and share those perspectives, some things may become quite irrelevant and taking out of time. So maybe when you get everyone in the room and everyone explains why either every step of the process is important, then you can realize what processes or what actions, whether small or big, are crucial to accomplishing what you're trying to achieve.
Sometimes realize that something you were doing was useless and not helpful. Sometimes you realize that what you were doing is super helpful. You didn't realize quite how it was used in a
Important it
downstream.
was.
You didn't see the broad context of
And that's what the whole workshop with the 5 maps does. It takes everything into the right place, and if something is out of place, then you won't use it. I had an experience with that at a scale-up company that we grow really fast, and we needed to create some pages to show other departments what we are working on, when we will have certain deliveries about the products we had. And after growing our portfolio as well, it was time consuming to update all those pages. Why we always had a question like, is anybody reading it, or do they use another platform? Like, if we mean this page for somebody else to use, should we interview them what data they exactly need? Because maybe we organize it in a way it takes another 10-20 minutes to debug and put it in another file. So after a while, we started to have some conversations. So we try to give you, is it the right way to give you? And it took some while to figure out, and I'm still not sure if that's the right way, but we could have saved so much time and effort if we just spend 2 days together and understand the full flow, how we work together, instead of having some issues, resistance, or causing difficulty to others. But thank you. Right. Okay, great example. Let's go on. So this is a key details about applying flow engineering. So as I said, if you read this book, you will have a handful guide how to apply this at your organization. When to apply, that's the most important thing. And that is the question I also had when I first heard about the book. Like, so is it solving my problem or not? You can apply this when you need to cut cost or improve the time to market. When you need to do the planning now, when there is a reorganization and now the roles and responsibilities changed. When you see that your calendar starts to be full of meetings, while sometimes similar things are discussed in several meetings. When you are acquiring or have been acquired, I have seen when another company was acquired to buy our company, and we had meetings and we talked about projects, but we did not speak the same language. They still followed their own way of working. We still try to follow our way of working. And this can be a solution, this type of situations. When you need to onboard staff into a complicated workflow, sometimes it's so much to digest to have many Word documents to understand who is working with who and what is your responsibility. But when you have a visual workflow that you build together, it's so much easy to onboard new people in the complex workflow. Sometimes only experts understand. And when you need to figure out what is going on or where to focus and what to do. So definitely when you just feel like the more and more you talk with others and you feel like many of you don't understand the full process, but this is how we always do and did, then you might need to invest some time to understand the process and if possible, optimize it. When this flow engineering mapping exercises takes place, you can have an in-person workshop or a virtual space to do this. Always in-person workshops are preferred, but we understand that many times we work with hybrid team and we need to enable them digitally. Maybe we can do it for fully digitally. So in-person workshop needs post-its. Maybe we can go to the next slide. So what we need in-person workshops, you need just a board, some paper, sticky notes. This is a simple exercise. And in hybrid environment, there are collaborative visual tools. In the past, we also worked with like a big board called Stoneboard, when everybody could add virtual post-its and they could link the tasks together. And I did not expect it, but it was really working well. People started to understand how they are connected to the big picture rather than listening to the project manager. And in case the project manager is out on holiday, then nobody knows where to focus. And this enabled them to actively reach out to each other rather than relying on a plan. Um, each map takes 2-3 hours based on experience of the team and of the facilitator. So altogether, the recommendation was to book approximately 2 days in case you believe that the right teams are joining and build the maps together. And who is involved? So definitely you need to involve the right people, maybe not someone who just got onboarded. You need people who are responsible and accountable within the value stream and who are in a leadership role or who are able to change the system, workflow, and teams. And sometimes you need to pay attention to the politics as well to make sure you invite the influential team or members in the organization. Once you identify the bottlenecks, you can involve only the critical people who are critical to those areas. So after a while, you can reduce the number of people who need to join because we understand that they have other responsibilities to do. And the facilitator is essential and ideally neutral. So you don't influence the politics in the room. Ideally, you take care that there are not much politics and not much defensiveness in the room, but you focus on the outcome. So when you read the book, definitely you read it from the perspective of facilitator, and you can definitely start to facilitate these exercises already when you finish the book. But later on, we share some ways how to move forward in this.
Is that best practice here that you can share with us?
The best practice is to do something that works for the group. And, you know, it can, there's a power to being together in person. So if you have the opportunity to do it in person, and you can even use digital tools when you're in person, but the world is so distributed, so remote that really Steve and I wrote this book originally to make it, to make it, ensure that it was smooth for the digital environments, because the majority of the mapping that I've done has always been in digital environments because I've been fully remote for a long time. So it can take the team a little bit of familiarity to get to know the tool. The point is to do something that works, and it can be anything, you know, and it's just visualize collectively for the group, and something where everyone can participate is the powerful part, where everybody's adding their own ideas and sharing. So the one that there's lots of them. So Mural, Miro, Lucid Spark are probably the most popular. For the book, you know, we did all of the book planning on a big whiteboard, and just being able to move things in 2 dimensions and add pictures and draw connections, so forth. Humans are very visual creatures. You know, 30% of the brain is dedicated to visual processing. 50% is sort of largely involved in visual processing. And so if you're not using that visualization, you're actually disabling us all. Like we all become disabled if you can't visualize it, can't show the world in some kind of a visual form. We're not using our primary sense.
This is really interesting. When we had this meeting together with the team to put the sticky notes virtually, and who was present in the room, also they added these notes. After all, we moved to MS project. And when I needed to ask some critical details about the project, they said, I don't understand this MS project. Can you open this Stormboard and have a look, like, because I placed it here and here and here, and we needed to export it again because as they placed this, they completely remembered, but then they also require to have that type of view because it's so easy to show and explain. And I totally understand it. Many times engineers don't need to work with MS project. So when you show them that complicated overview, they say, okay, I just don't want to look at it. From the book, if you can host a board game, you can host these mapping exercises. This is encouraging everyone. If you feel or see some inefficiencies, you can definitely apply some details from this book to improve in your workplace.
Yeah, if you can host a board game, we think about the skill of facilitating a workshop as some like magic skill that only if a trained facilitator would have, and there's a self-consciousness. Am I doing it right? Do people like it? You get partway through and you're like, oh, people are having a really bad time, and so this kind of what you're doing whenever you're facilitating a group discussion, it's a bit of social coordination that's happening, and to try to accomplish some goal. Like, okay, we want to accomplish this. There's these steps we have to think through this challenge and this challenge and this challenge. And I was just thinking about the example. Many people like buy board games. They've never seen the board game before in their life. They open it up, and the board game has one set of instructions for the host and another set of instructions for the players, the participants. Hosts maybe have a slightly longer set of instructions, participants very small instructions, and people learn a new game in 30 minutes. And then they participate, and it just works very smoothly. And so being a workshop facilitator is not necessarily any more complicated than that. It's just kind of creating some parameters, creating some rules of the game. And that's all it is. Okay, here's the game we're going to play. Here's here are the rules, put whatever you want on put whatever you think are the main problems that the team is facing on the board. Okay. And then we'll give 5 minutes for that. And then you do that for 5 minutes, and then time out, 5 minutes in, move on to the next phase of the game. And so you're designing interaction games, basically.
And one thing about the game, I think that's like a key insight for flow engineering and efforts like flow engineering is that you don't have a good game by just having one good facilitator, right? I mean, it's a co-creation activity, right? It's everybody wanting to have fun and really leaning in that produces the best outcome.
How do you typically approach solving workflow inefficiencies in your projects? Yeah. So after reading this book, I feel like I would definitely discuss with the stakeholders that I would like to conduct process mapping and analysis. But many times we see it in organizations that they just run trial and error. One person says, I'm working in this field for a long time. I think this will work and it needs to be followed. So I think now that we have this knowledge, we can definitely share in our organization that there is a better way of doing the workflow and optimizing it in case needed. So here we can see the 5 maps we bear with this process. The book recommends. So there is the outcome mapping, current state mapping, dependency mapping, future state mapping, and the flow roadmap afterwards. So we will walk through these roadmaps, these mapping exercises and how to build a flow roadmap in the upcoming slides. What I would like to do is after introducing the mapping, we can have some examples from Andrew and Steve, or have some comments to share with the audience, because it's probably definitely better than going to the details on the slide itself. So you can see which maps contributes to which key element of action, which is helped by flow engineering. Identify value, build clarity, and enable flow. How the outcome of being helps to identify value. So we are all aligned on what is exactly giving values. While sometimes if you ask each people, what do you think could help, or what do you think that stops you? Everyone has different opinions to come together and identify we all work for a specific goal and need to work together on that. Building clarity is understanding the current workflow and what we think can be a better process to do things, to work together towards this value, towards giving value. Enabling flow, help understand what we need to do together to make this seamless, to optimize a more seamless. Steve, Andrew, do you have anything to add here?
Well, just that I think your slides are better than the slides that we put together. So
It's a little fantastic.
Some colors.
That's honestly
First of all, some introduction about the outcome mapping. So it is, again, a collaborative workshop to clarify value. It feels clear, visual set that maps the path, and it helps to bridge the gap between the teams, individuals, and areas of concern. So we are thinking in terms of outcomes and delivering customer values. So some of the results from these exercises were we are delivering value to customers twice as often, or we have cut production defect by 50%. So these are great outcomes. And whenever you would try to optimize some process and you share with your management in that you want to have some workshop with the team, you want to optimize process, sometimes you get the feedback, we don't have time for this. We will need to focus on something else. But when you share these results, whenever you see that you need to convince your managers, then they realize maybe it's worth to spend 1 or 2 days with the team to uh, achieve these outcomes. And this is just outcome mapping. This is visualizing what we want to achieve. But later on, going through these steps, you can achieve these outcomes. So here we define what we want to achieve. And here are the steps of outcome mapping. We have the discovery. We define the target outcome. We see what makes this valuable, what is in our way, why we cannot achieve this right now, and what can we test and start on, what are the next steps. So here we define what we want to achieve and maybe what are some misunderstandings. So here it was an interesting example shared in the book that the teams, let's say, the engineer said, we cannot work because we need to make so many reports and there are so much demands from management, but management had another idea why things don't work well. So if you interview each of these people from each of the levels, you realize that maybe they never thought about it, or it's difficult to bring up these questions. And this is what you enable as a facilitator to have these discussions in the room because now it is allowed.
And the idea just on the previous slide for clarification, when it says like, deliver twice as fast, cut production defects. Those are the aspiration. Those are the goals that you want to achieve. And so it is entirely possible to achieve those kinds of things. But the point is to make clear at the outset why we would set aside time, because everybody's busy, right? And the default is thinking we should just, we don't have time to set it, step away for 2 hours or 90 minutes, whatever, to watch a webinar or do a book club or to, do value stream mapping exercise, or we don't have time, right? Busy, 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 busy. So we need to say, listen, okay, we're all as busy as we could possibly be. And generally, I think everybody just gets themselves busy. It's something in our psychology. We just get ourselves to be as busy as we can possibly be. And but we're not getting the right things done necessarily. And so looking at, actually, I really think we could increase the release frequency. We could reduce the, number of defects. We could smooth out, reduce the number of steps in a process, something, right? And that's needed, as you pointed out, Emma, to convince management, but it's needed also to convince everybody on the team. Like, why are we going to participate in some discussion for a couple of hours? Like, why would we pause what we're doing? And we started the session by talking about value stream mapping and the power of visualizing a process. But if there's nothing you need to improve in the process, you don't need value stream mapping. And so this is to decide, is there something we need to improve, right? Is there some way that we could simplify everything or make it more effective and so forth? And if there is, and that's the target outcome, and clarify what's the target outcome, then all of the other mapping exercises will show their value as ways to move in that direction.
We can go to the next slide, the next mapping.
I think Steve has something to mention here.
You were passionate. It was talking on you. Sorry. I was just thinking, one of the things that always plagued me as a leader was trying to justify that time away from doing the work, right? Pulling people away from their day job, because I knew about the, work that needed to be done. And I knew about the struggles, how difficult it was for people to manage everything that was going on and all the distractions and disruptions. And so the outcome map really is kind of a sales exercise in a way, but it's also a way to check your thinking, to validate that this is worth stepping away from. the work
Probably.
for. This is worth you stopping what you're doing to sharpen the saw. So I think that it's people will often want to jump right into the value stream mapping, but the outcome mapping, I think, can be used even before anyone's decided to do flow engineering, right? The outcome map can be how you sell the idea to people, how you socialize the idea. So I think it's really important to try to get people excited about doing this type of work in a way that they'll willingly step away and play the game with you.
I would even say, when we use the term flow engineering, from my point of view, flow engineering is just a fancy name for having good conversations using visualization, right? But if you call it engineering and like flow engineering and so forth, it can give a little bit of weight to it to maybe help convince people. Flow can maybe use a little re-engineering here. It's just it just means we weren't talking to each other as well as we could. We weren't really understanding what was going on, and beginning to acknowledge that the human confusion that we have and the overcoming all of this human confusion is a critically important first-class citizen in the working world. It's another kind of engineering. I know you're busy. You think you need to do software engineering or this engineering or that engineering. We need some flow engineering.
Agreed. Convincing might be a difficult part, and it's good to emphasize why we are doing this.
Especially if I know not, if you have a process that previously took maybe, let's say, 10 days or 1 month to be processed and done, and then you change something, you put on another process or someone else steps in, and this process from 10 days or 1 month becomes 2 months or 3 months or indefinite. You don't even know when that thing is going to be done and delivered to the client. So then that workshop efficiency is, apparent to everyone. And that's when people have to join a rule and discuss about it. So yes, you are busy, but busy doing what? As I was like,
I love that phrase. Yeah, that's great. Purposely doing what?
Or
So important.
then we get to the next mapping exercise, the current state value stream mapping. This is a powerful tool for visualizing and understanding the current flow of work. And it helps to identify bottlenecks, delays, and inefficiencies that is impacting the team's performance. So this can create some hurtful moments. I'm not sure if you have some experience before. Steve, Andrew, is there a story you would like to share here? Because I could really imagine sometimes there is a blame game here.
It's possible that that shows up in current state mapping because it can be the first time people are confronted with the amount of waste and delay that's happening. And that's another reason I think that outcome mapping and the early, the previous workshop sets the stage and tries to really send the message of this is a big system that we have. There's lots of obstacles. There's lots of conditions that are in the way right now that are contributing to the current state. And so I think that outcome mapping is an opportunity. And even before, when you're socializing the idea of doing this type of mapping, when you're sending out the invites to the workshops, to be crystal clear, when you begin the activity of current state value stream mapping, really kind of honoring the system, honoring the fact that the system is perfectly engineered to get the results that it gets, right? And we didn't design it to work the way that it does, but we can design it to work better. And we can design it to work better for all the contributors involved, meaning, everyone gets a better outcome.
Probably this value current state value stream mapping helps to uncover that it is like inefficiencies of groups or setup rather than inefficiency of a person, because sometimes we get to this, like somebody is inexperienced, this is why we are slow, or somebody is not working hard enough. And this probably helps to uncover and be in the room. And now everybody understands we put so much pressure maybe on one person or one group. So it at the end, when we have this kind of visualization and realize what is the bottleneck, at the same moment it helps to realize everybody realizes in the room we need to have.
And again, even there, this sort of spirit of playfulness, right? There's a big insight for me not long ago to, because I'd heard a lot about we need to take a scientific thinking approach to work, and there's a lot of uncertainty when you're operating with a lot of unknowns. There's no better way than a scientific approach, putting forward a hypothesis, testing it, checking the results, and so forth. But that a scientific approach implies a playfulness, right? Because there's the possibility that you might be wrong. You're starting from a place of uncertainty. It's a serious game, but it's like still you're just trying to figure this out. It's like a puzzle, right?
Even as a facilitator, it can be intimidating to try to run something like this for the first time. So with flow engineering, we're really aiming at a very, very simple representation, just to go from not having information, not having shared understanding to a common view that drives a high quality decision. We aim for simplicity and really just trying to find the one biggest opportunity that's available to the value stream.
So it identifies and understands the key dependencies and constraints impacting the flow of work. So dependencies can take many forms: shared resources, information flows, approvals, or handoffs between teams, and it can address the root causes of delays and bottlenecks. So this is a typical example what we just discussed, that sometimes it's because a group is working on multiple projects, therefore even though you plan with some resources, they cannot work at the specific time on your project, or this the value stream, information flows, and approvals, handoff between teams. This is again crucial when there are new team members onboarded in your team and you work with fresh but experienced people in your group. Many times they don't know what they expect to receive and what they are expected to give to others. And this mapping exercise helps them to understand. So as a project manager, I had some experience when somebody didn't receive something and highlighted, I did not receive something and now I will be late because of somebody else. And when the question comes, did you ask for it? Then you hear, no, because I always get. And now this new person didn't give it to me. And sometimes I think this is an experience of many project managers, and this helps to understand. So I understand what I need to give, but I understand what I need to prepare, but how to help others, I don't have an idea. And this is an interesting mapping exercise that is beneficial for all projects, actually.
So one of the things that I've learned about in dependency mapping is the idea of a current reality tree, which is a little bit different than 5 whys that we reference in the book. But current reality tree really is kind of pulling all the negative conditions that arise in the value stream map and then trying to trace them to a very small number of original causes. And you do it by essentially mapping them together until you hopefully come to, one major core conflict.
Future state value stream mapping. It's a practice for envisioning and designing the improved future state, what we want to improve based on the learning so far. Identify key improvements that will enable a better flow. We need to have a realistic and achievable target now, and it covers the 6 to 12 months in the future. So we need to be cautious about that. So here again, the team can work together to identify the future state, what we would like to achieve. So here are the main steps for future state mapping. What did we discover so far? What are the improvements? What should be our target? What does next look like? And how much better it is? So these are the main steps, and definitely the book gives you a detailed way of working, how to work together with the team, who to have in the room, and how to perform this exercise as a facilitator. So the details you can find in the book. So this is the flow roadmap, the long-term vision. It insights to improvement opportunities, and it is a communication and alignment tool. It keeps the team focused and motivated, and we need to have regular review and updates. So this helps us to create a prioritize list what we need to focus on to make our value stream more efficient. This is, let's say, our outcome, but we need to make sure that we don't leave the outcome as it is. We need to come back to this regularly to make sure that we focus on the right thing to achieve the right improvements. So we need to focus on the most impactful change that was highlighted. And I cannot highlight it more, that we need to come back to this. Many times I have been in workshops when we needed to identify why we think some things are not working, or what are the things we need to improve. And then we left the room, we had many ideas, but then nobody had time to follow up, and we didn't know what's the next time we meet. So this is something that this step enables us to do, and we need to align with our stakeholders that we only start this exercise if we ensure that we can regularly come back to this, and we are still committed to it after the 2 days of value stream mapping together.
I'm sure everyone's been a part of a retrospective where we come up with so many good ideas to address all these really big challenges that we encountered, and then we leave and nothing happens, and then we trip over the same things that we left on the floor in the last iteration. And really, I think it can be challenging. Like I find that a couple of the components, the roadmap, are really helpful. Like, it's one thing to lay out things that we're going to do, but I think it's just as helpful to say what you're not going to do today. And then the idea that we should be measuring our progress either with milestones or metrics to say that, are we headed in the right direction with that? Or how do we know when it's stalled? How do we know when someone should intervene or help out, or we should pivot to something else? And how we'll know when we're done and we can celebrate that progress is also super important.
And it's really important to identify the owners. Otherwise, we all believe that it will work, and then nobody is taking ownership, then it becomes difficult.
And also, we've talked about these 5 maps. This is the 5th of 5 maps, and it may not be clear if this is the first time you're encountering these, that they seem, maybe quite disjointed. Like, why are there all of these maps? But it is one natural flow to kind of, if you think about the big picture, these 5 maps are basically just answering the question, what do we want to do? What's going on right now? Figure out what really is causing some of the challenges that we think we're seeing. What do we think good would look like? And what are the next steps to get there? We've broken it into 5 maps, to 5 mapping sessions, to make this a little bit something that you could do in manageable chunks. But if you look at the whole picture, it's meant to be quite intuitive. This is quite intuitive, just a natural approach to problem solving.
And sometimes there are things that are low hanging fruit that came up in the first session that we can bring in, and maybe it's valuable, maybe it's relevant to the target outcome, maybe not, but we have a chance to go back and pull something forward and say, okay, well, this is really easy to do. We think it'll have a significant impact. It's aligned to the target outcome. It wasn't necessarily part of the value stream, or it wasn't part of the hotspot that we identified, but it will contribute to the outcome. And so let's put it on the roadmap. As a facilitator, one of my default actions is sort of say yes and all the time. Yes and let's validate that, or yes and let's see if we can connect that to the target outcome in a stronger way so that everyone is motivated to act on it. Because I think having great ideas is a starting point. It doesn't mean that everyone is convinced. It doesn't mean that there is a high enough return on investment to counter the inertia, or that it's worth making a change. Better isn't always something that you should act on, right? There's a cost
Mhm.
to change. There's always a cost to change. And so it has to be significantly better, and you have to be able to convince everybody that it's better. So I think that in those cases where people feel convinced that they know what to do, that's half the battle.
Justifying it. As project managers, we need to do it many times, but others in the organization sometimes feel like they are in a position that they can tell the solution without justifying the details. So I think it's really great that you mentioned that still after these mapping exercises, they have the possibility to work on this, let's say, business case and convince everyone in case they believe that that's the solution.
I think the greatest constraint that we have is getting buy-in to do those workshops. In my current project, we are working on integrating multiple tools and platforms to streamline our workflow. How can CI engineering principles help us achieve seamless integration and improve overall team efficiency?
But this is a very thorough and detailed question. I like it a lot. I would say that my instinct about the applicable of flow engineering to this context would be if we map the current state, really target those areas of greatest waste or delay or friction and the bottlenecks that are created by those constraints. Then what we can do, and what we often do, is attribute the tools that are being used, the information flow that's happening through each of those activities, and who's involved. And that can be really excellent contextual information to say, okay, if we're implementing a solution to this, that's telling us what kind of data is going to be flowing into that system, what data we expect to get out of it, why we need that data, like why we need that specific activity and what form the output should take, who needs to be a recipient of that output. So if you're planning a tool implementation, you can attribute that change and the plan for change to those specific areas of the value stream that are significantly challenged at this moment, which I think is really powerful, because if you're talking about a tool implementation, often what happens is we think about all the features and we think about all the capabilities and we inject those into the current system. We just kind of try to implement everything wholesale. But an easier path would be to think about what are the most important capabilities that we need to implement and validate that they actually do what we expect them to do. How do we test them in parallel with the current system? Because in a lot of cases, we lean into these products and these solutions and we sign these gigantic contracts because we don't have a way of validating that this actually isn't the right solution, or that there isn't a nice, clean implementation path for us. We just dive into it and trudge through the mud until we're done. But if you can separate the critical path of that application, if you can test the specific capabilities that you expect to deliver the results that you're hoping for, and you can do that quickly, then you can work with the vendor, you can work with implementation teams to iron out the rough spots, to build the integrations that matter the most. Oftentimes what we can do with a new tool is implement 30% of the features and establish parity with our current solution, and then build out the rest of the implementation over time. We could get rid of the current system if we were to check 10 of these boxes. We don't need everything to be connected and all the data to be flowing everywhere in order to retire the previous system. One of the biggest problems we always have is, we keep the old way and we also have the new way. And now we have two systems to look at, two systems to operate under. Now that we have to build synchronization because we have the old way, which still some data is flowing in there. It has to be propagated across and it needs to be in this format because the new system wants it in this format. That's a nightmare. So I think getting very specific about what is this meant to deliver to us? What is the outcome of the solution? And how does that interact with our current workflow or a future state workflow that maybe eliminates steps, activities, involvement from other teams that's no longer necessary with the new solution? So there's a number of different areas in flow engineering that I think will inform how you go about implementation, how you go about evaluating different solutions, and really bringing everybody along with like, this is what it's going to take to get this thing stood up, and how it's going to affect all of our workflow when we get it implemented, or even along the way. How are we going to know when we milestone demonstrate that you're through a certain phase of implementation and ready? Target isn't the value stream, right? We're implementing some new set of features or a new solution for a customer. And so what you could do in that case is run through flow engineering. Instead of mapping a value stream, you map a customer journey, and you would highlight where in the customer journey are those challenge points or pain points that the new solution addresses. And you can run through the entire thing that way, right? So that at the end with the flow roadmap, what you would have is the plan of action for implementing each of the features, for getting all the work, all the requirements done. And it's not a substitute for a Gantt chart, right? It's not a substitute for intensive project management, but it can get everybody on the same page very quickly and show a very direct connection between what are we trying to do and why are we trying to do it? What is the expected impact? And what are the unexpected impacts that we just realize over the course of mapping and having the conversations?
Yeah, great. These are the key items that the rest of the book covers. How to lead the teams in flow improvement, how to avoid common obstacles as you are the leader of this flow engineering improvement in the organization, and how to influence others, flow engineering through value stream management, and how to increase influence to the organization. So these are the details, the chapters you will find in the book. It definitely helps you to understand what is your place in the organization, how to grow this mindset. And my interesting key takeaway was about building communities and have some experts to help the people who are starting in value stream mapping and flow engineering, and also making sure that your leadership team, key stakeholders are on board, because definitely you might have some difficulties to bring through the ideas in case they don't have the full buy-in or they don't understand what you are actually doing. Sometimes it's difficult to lead a change in an organization. So leading a change in an organization might be difficult, starting from the bottom, but I think when you can create a case why it would help you, and you can even refer to the book, which covers many of already successful stories using flow engineering, can help you justify to take some time from the team and work through this. I was reading also about rebranding in the book. So sometimes when you come with these big thoughts of flow engineering and mapping, people think it's another waste of time from management. And sometimes you need to just say, we will have a 2 days workshop. What goes wrong? How to improve? And maybe simplify it to a way of speaking which is already available in your organization. I thought it's really interesting.
When we think about how to lead change in an organization, is that the importance of good communication and mutual respect goes in all directions in the organization. And it's very easy, I think, if you're an individual contributor, to think of, management or the management as being some nameless, faceless people, or maybe they've got names, but they're very distant people from you, and not really appreciating that everyone involved in any organization in any capacity is just another person, and their brains and their bodies and so forth, they work in effectively the same way. And we all, in some sense, only want to do things that are of value, don't want to do things that are, wasting time. The challenge in an organization is that the value for the organization is understood at a collective scale. And so people higher in the organization, it is their responsibility to try to understand, think about, what the organization needs in the short term, in the long term, financially, in terms of other aspects as well, and to represent that. And it's not necessarily an easy job for them to communicate to the rest of the organization, to figure out how to convey the benefits in a clear way. And so the idea of flow engineering is really about bringing people together and collectively improving your understanding of what is the value that we need to accomplish, and what is the value for the organization. What's the value for the individuals, and sort of recognizing and appreciating that in lean, we talk about a catchball, that there's a catchball process, which is that, let's say someone higher in the organization has an idea, an initiative, they throw the idea down to the person in the next tier of management, and that person digests it, understands it, thinks about it, raises concerns, throws it back. And then it comes back from management, throws it back. And the ideas are bouncing back and forth through different layers of the organization, because the people, the small number of central decision makers, it's true that they don't have all the details. It's true that they don't understand all of the possible technical consequences of everything you might come up with. It's true. And that's why they do need to hear from everybody, and there needs to be an open, respectful kind of communication. But it's shockingly hard, right? And even this telephone game where like one person whispers into the ear of the next person and they whisper, such a trivial example of how easily and quickly communication can break down. And if you want to, and that's effectively what we have in an organization. You've got communication from a number of central decision makers, and you've got lateral communication, the difficulty and the challenge of ensuring that there's clear communication through an organization. So it absolutely requires patience and mutual understanding in all directions.
Probably underserved aspect of flow engineering and value stream mapping and designing workflow is this aspect of information flow, right? The intentional feedback loops. What in network sciences is called a control plane. A control plane basically is all the signal information that gets passed around everything in the internet to basically say, here's my condition. I want everyone to know about my condition. Tell me about your condition. And everyone is sharing this information so that the entire network can collectively understand state at any given time and say, okay, well, based on the information available, we can make certain adjustments. We can change policies, or we can leverage different policies under different conditions. And that it allows all these devices on the internet to just operate without being directed, focusing on their own capabilities and contributing to the network as part of this huge, holistic, complicated system. And so I think that what that means for us in flow engineering is being very intentional about the future state, incorporating these feedback loops and saying that if we want high quality downstream, we have to be sending signal upstream that informs the highest quality decisions. And we need to have information available that informs our decisions as early as possible. The magic of a baton toss is that both sides have already agreed before the baton toss how it's going to work and where it should be at any given moment, so that both sides can be coming together, right, to meet each other as closely as possible. And so, in a relay team, they're practicing this and they're getting real-time feedback. But imagine we're in knowledge work. We're not handing a baton, so we don't get the feedback of, oh, we were 2 inches to the left or 2 seconds early. We need that level of feedback in knowledge work. And so we need to intentionally build it into all these activities and say that the way we're going to know that this is an effective change to the system is that we're collecting feedback about the results of the change and incorporating that into what we do next and how we operate on a continuous basis.
Leading flow engineering. This chapter talks about leadership strategies for flow engineering. This explains how to align teams, their skills, and create a culture of improvement. Practical tips include create a vision, engaging stakeholders, and celebrating small wins to overcome challenges. like resistance to change. This chapter gives practical advices to guide teams and sustain momentum. Common traps to avoid, highlights common mistakes like neglecting the narrative behind the change or misaligned incentives that harm collaboration. It emphasizes starting small, focusing on critical issues, and avoiding excessive complexity that can overwhelm teams. This advice helps teams to avoid common pitfalls and stay on track for success. It introduces value stream management as a way to measure, manage, and improve streams over time. It provides guidance on mapping, analytics, and creating systems for ongoing improvement. The chapter also explores how technologies like AI can enhance value streams by building a culture of innovation and adaptability. Have you ever used value stream management in your projects? Okay, thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, it's been a real with the group here. So I appreciate everything you guys are doing. Project managers help keep the world going.
What is your next step in this journey? So if you found this book insightful and you feel like following this journey and take it to the next level, you can join to this flow engineering group and you can see the QR code there. And the book, there was also many referrals to other books leading the change in the organization or justifying the cost impact of your changes. I think there's a really great list of books and you don't need to search for it for yourself. Especially in the conclusion chapter, you can find some really interesting books. So you can follow this path by learning more. And the last one is the VSM Consortium. And I know, Maria, that you started the journey as well. Can you share some details about that? So there are webinars, free webinars. There's everything you need to know about what the value stream is, how to implement value stream mapping and value stream management. There are use cases. It is very, very interesting, and it has a special offer even if teams want to join. Thank you for joining us, everyone. So we want to thank everyone for being a part of our book club this year and for making it such a success.